No question. Okay. So this is the slope of the line. It doesn't matter um, how you do it, as long as you are consistent with these. Let's assume we have AB alternatively. Let's assume we have A to be 4 and 3 and B to be 1 and 1. Someone decided to name this one x2, y2, and then x1, y1. You should get the same answer, okay? The slope m is going to be equal to y2, which is 3, minus y1, which is what? 1 all over x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is 1. And that is going to be 2, sorry. So y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So 4 minus 1. So this is going to be 2 over 3. Um, oh, this is 2 over 3. Okay. This is 2 over 3. So yeah, this is 2 over 3 because we still have 2 over 3 there here. I don't know why I changed it, but it should be 2 over 3. So 2 divided by 3 is going to be, I think, around 0.67. And this is also 0.67 positive. All right. So no matter how you define the A and then the B, or any of the 2 points, being consistent should yield the same result. Now, what does this mean? 0.67 or 2 over 3 as the slope. It means the relationship between X and Y is positive, okay? So this means that we have a positive relationship between X and Y. This implies that when X increases, Y also increases. So if let's say there's price here, or there is quantity of, let's say, oranges, and this is the price of oranges, it means that when the price of oranges increases, the quantity of oranges also increases. So this describes the relationship between two variables. It doesn't matter what you put at X and at Y. All right. Any question? Okay. If no question, then we move on to um, how do we, or what is the slope of this line passing through C, B, and C? Let's call it L2. This is your turn to try and tell me the answer. Find the slope of the line passing through C, B, and C. 4/3. So Braden had 4/3. Okay. Do we all agree that the answer should be 4/3?
It should be negative because it's fallen, but
Okay, -4/3, right?
Can you scroll up so I can see the points again?
Do you want to see? Did you say you wanted to see the point?
Yeah.
Okay, -4,
Point
1,
C is 4, 1, and
and then 1, -2.
I got 3 over or -3/5.
Okay, -3/5.
I'm gonna change mine again to -5/3.
Okay, we have -5/3. We have two answers. Four over three. And then, okay, -4/3. All right. Let's work together and see. So C is -4, 1, B is 1, -2. C -4, 1, and B is it 1, -2?
Yes.
Yes, 1, -2. So again, it doesn't matter where how you define the X and Y coordinates. What matters most is you are consistent with your X and Y labeling. So normally I just put X1, Y1 here, and then X2, Y2 here, and start with the calculation. M is going to be Y2 minus Y1 all over X2 minus X1. So that is going to be equal to Y2 here is -2 minus, so I've written Y2, which is -2, minus Y1. What is Y1? Y1 is just 1. All right? All over X2. X2 is just 1. And then this minus X1. X1 is what? -4. So be careful here. This is going to be equal to, what is -2 minus -1? -3 divided by 1 minus -4. Negative is going to be what? Positive. So we're going to have 1 plus 4, which is going to be what? 5. So the answer is going to be -3/5. This. Alternatively, so I want to show you that it doesn't matter. As long as you are consistent, you should get the same answer. C is -4, 1. B is 1, -2. All right. Now, let's choose this one to be X2, Y2. We have X1, Y1. And therefore, M, the gradient, is going to be Y2 minus Y1 all over X2 minus x1. So this is going to be y2 is 1 minus y1, which is negative 2, all over x2, which is negative 4, minus x1, which is what? Negative 1. So this is definitely 1 minus minus 2. We're going to have 1 plus 2, which is going to be what? 3. So 3 divided by negative 4 minus negative 1 is going to be negative 4 plus 1, which is going to be what?
-5.
Negative 5. Wait,
No.
we should be careful here. So negative 4, 1, 1, negative 2. So y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1.
Why do you have a -1? Because the point is just 1, right?
So yes, you're right. So um y2 here is 1 minus negative y1, which is negative 2, minus 4, which is y2, sorry, x2, minus x1, which is positive 1 here. Yes, it shouldn't be negative, it should be positive. So 1 minus minus 2 is going to be 3. Negative 4 minus 1 is going to be negative 5. So we have negative 3 over 5, the same as this. So it doesn't matter. As long as you are consistent with your numbers, you should get the same thing. Okay, let's do a final one and then we can move on. Find the slope of the line passing through C and D. Let's call this L3. So C is negative 4, 1, D is 1, 1. Oh, Braden said I'm wrong again. I agree with. Yeah, you should be wrong a lot of times here. This is where we make all the mistakes, okay? The mistakes, you should make it here so that you can answer the questions in your work. You can make the right choices. And again, this class is not about being wrong or being right. You're going to understand that economics is more about understanding concept and arguing the way out. Like there are certain things that are not clear cut, and most things are clear cut, but there are certain things that, you know, sometimes you have to yeah, argue your way out. We'll talk about positive statements and normative statements as well. So yeah, Make sure that you make all the mistakes here. Who has the answer? Find M. Zero over -5. 0 over -5. Okay. -5 over 0. Wait. -4, 1, and 1, 1, right? -4, 1, and 1, 1. Okay. This is not drawn to scale, so 0 over -5. Okay, let's do it together. M is equal to y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Let this be x1, y1, x2, y2. And then this means that we have 1 minus 1 all over. So y2 minus y1 is 1 minus 1. And then we have x2, 1 minus x1, which is -4. So this is definitely going to be 0 over 5. Right? Did we do any mistake? So y2 minus y1 is 1, 1, all over x2, which is 1, minus x1. So minus x1 is +5. It's not -5. Right? So
That's
whether
what
it's
I got. That's what I got when I did it the second time, but when I did it the first time, when I flip-flopped the numbers, I got the 0 over -5.
okay, let's see. So this is equal to 0.
Mm-hmm.
Alternatively, so you did x2, y2, and then x1, y1, right? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, let's try that and see. Alternatively, so M is going to be y2, which is 1, this one, minus y1, which is 1, all over x2, which is -4, this one, minus x1, which is 1. So that is going to be 0 over -5. Yes, so still we have 0. Yeah. What does it mean? The relationship between x and y is 0. There's no relationship, right? There's no relationship between x and y. When x is changing, nothing happens to y. And when y is also changing, nothing happens to x. This is an example of a situation where, let's say, you have two variables that are not related. Let's say you have the price of ice cream and then the quantity demanded for shoes. So let's say this is shoes, quantity for shoes being bought, and this is the price of ice cream. Why is the price of ice cream? When the price of ice cream is increasing, shoes, nothing happens to shoes, quantity demanded for shoes. So two unrelated commodities. All right. Any question with what we've done? So now that we understand this, let's go back to the lecture notes. Now, I'll give you a few minutes to get yourself acquainted with this, like 2, 3 minutes. Read everything here and then see whether you understand what is going on in this table. 2, 3 minutes. All right. Now, can someone explain what is going on in this table for me?
It's the relationship between the household income and the household spending.
Good. So when you see this on the, let me use the pen here. This column and this column, we are looking at what is the correlation between the national aggregate household consumption spending, of course, in billion dollars, and that of the national aggregate household income. So, what is the relationship between income and spending? All right. You can use these to find the relationship. So, just like we did, to find the correlation is the same as finding the slope. So you can choose any of these. So we can use this to be the y-axis and these to be the x-axis. So this is y-axis, this is x-axis. Now you can choose any of these 2 points because if this is a straight line, then all the points on the straight line will give you the same slope. Okay. Now you can see here that we have change in y over change in x, which means y2 minus y1, 11,080 minus 10,680, all over x2 minus x1, which is 12,300 minus 11,800, just like we did. So to put this like what we did, this is going to be 11,080, comma 12,300 for the first, let's say A, and for B, we are going to have 12,300. Wait, we don't have to make this mistake here. I'll do this again. slowly for you to see what's happening. I think I made a mistake. We are just trying to put this in the coordinate form. So A here will be, this is going to be X, Y, right? And this B is going to be X and Y. Now, for 2012, we can say X will be 11,080 and Y will be 10,680. And for B, we can say this is X2 12,300 and then Y2 11,080. So that we can do Y2 here, which is this, minus Y1, which is that, all over X2, which is this, minus X1, which is that. So we have a slope of 0.8. That is how you get a slope. So what this means is that, we have a positive number here, means that if the aggregate household income increases by 1 unit, consumption also increases by 0.8 unit. This is the same as 0.8 divided by 1. All right. So if aggregate household income increases by 1, then there's consumption will also increase by 0.8. What does it mean? Think about income, your income and your consumption of goods and services. If your income increases by $1, then you are spending 80 cents on goods and services. Okay, you are consuming. That is what this means. So the slope can tell you the relationship between two variables. Another way you can think about this is as income increases by 500 billion, consumption also increases by 400 units. Just by multiplying the top and down and the bottom of the fraction by a constant number. Does that make sense? Any question? Similarly, we can use this table, these two variables to find we can find the relationship between these two variables by finding the slope. And let's do it quickly. The slope between you can choose any of the 2 points, okay? So here we are choosing x2 to be 60, x1 to be 55, y2 to be that, y1 to be this. So y2 minus y1 is going to be 13 minus 14. So that's what you have here. All over x2 minus x1, which is 60 minus 55. 60 minus 55. So that is the m. The answer should give you negative 0.2. So this negative 0.2 is the same as negative 0.2 divided by 1. All right. What does it mean? What does it mean to have negative 0.2 over 1 for this? So this is the y component. So price per price of pizza. And this is going to be the quantity of pizza. In short, what does it mean? Okay. So what this means is that you see we are comparing price on top and quantity down. So y on top, x down, just like we did. Okay. So this means that to increase the quantity of pizza by 1 unit, you have to decrease the price of pizza by 0.2 dollars. Okay. So you can multiply what we have here is that you can multiply this by 5 and multiply this by 5 by a constant. When you do that, you're going to have 1, -1 of the price divided by 5 of the quantity, which makes it make a lot of sense. In a sense that to increase the quantity demanded per week of whatever good it is by 5 units, you would have to decrease the price of the commodity by $1. Right? Okay. So this is plotting the relationship. You're just plotting the x and y, x and y, x and y, x and y to give you the model. All right. So you're plotting these to give you the model. So this is our first model. And if you understand this, then you are good to go in this course. This is almost all the math that we're going to do. Any question before I move on? Okay. Now let's go to the introduction. So we want to talk about economics as a social science. A brief introduction of economics as a social science. So the idea economics comes from the word oikonomos, which we're going to see very soon. And I want to point out that you should pay attention to the vocabs, okay? The vocabularies in this course are something that you should be very careful, very intentional. I think that's the right word to keep because we'll be using them throughout the course. And at a point in time, we won't be going back to explain them. But because you are new to economics, I will be explaining these terms as we move on until we get to a point where I'll just mention them and then we move on. So in economics, we're going to talk about three principles that guide individuals' decision making. And these are the rational self-interest, choice being requiring time and information to be able to make choice. You need time and information. And then economic analysis is marginal analysis. You hear most often that economists think at the margin. So we're going to understand what that means. An economic model and some common errors to avoid while conducting economic analysis. This is where we'll talk about the fallacy of composition, the fallacy of association, and the fallacy of causation. Correlation is not causation. All right. What then is economics? So it's the study of how society allocates its scarce resources to satisfy their unlimited wants. Oikonomos is a Greek word which means one who manages the household. That is where the word economics came from. So to if you have a household, you know how managing household goes, where the money should go, where the time should go, who should be responsible for taking care of the kids at this point in time, who should be going to work, who should be staying at home. You know, all these are things that you do because resources are scarce. And that is the central idea in economics. Because of scarcity, we study economics. So the idea is to make important choices about how to, distribute limited resources. Because resources in itself are limited. All right. When you hear about what is the most important or central idea in economics, you say that it is scarcity or the allocation of resources because of scarcity. Okay. That's a central idea. Without scarcity, then there wouldn't be the need to even study economics. What then is scarcity? Well, scarcity means limited resources. We don't have everything that we need, and therefore we study economics. One definition of economics that I'm going to write here is something you can use throughout because it embodies the whole definition of economics. So in itself, economics is a social science it's a social science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. So this definition is my favorite because you have all the components in there. I don't have it in the slides, but if you can write it down, there are a few things that will come back to to make sure we understand this definition because it entails almost everything in economics.
Can you
Now let's
read
talk
what you
about,
wrote again? Sorry, I couldn't understand the last couple words.
okay,
The relationship between ends and scarce?
yes,
Scarce means.
scarce.
Mm, which have alternative uses.
Yes, which have alternative uses.
Mm.
So let's try to we can break it down right now. We say economics is a social science because it is not like the physical science that we know, right? So we study human behavior, things that people do, nudges. With physical science, like physics, for instance, you can think about, oh, if you throw a ball or whatever object up there, it's gonna come back, and there is this kind of gravity acting on it. No, we don't do that. We study human behavior. That is why we call it as a social science. It is not a biological science, it's not physical science, it's a social science. We are interested in what people do, human behavior. Now, yeah, we studies human behavior. It's a science that studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means. So what are ends? Ends are the things we want or desire. What are means? Quickly, means are the resources, what we have to satisfy the ends. So we have scarce resources, right? We talked about scarcity. However, the means itself have alternative uses in a sense that whatever means you have, if you have, let's say, let's use money or time as a resource, it has alternative uses. You may want to use the time for school, you may want to use the time for work, you may want to use the time for pleasure, you may want to use the time for something else. So this is the basic real definition of economics. And we are going to see why this definition is important later on. So scarcity itself is faced by everybody. Nobody is free from scarcity. So household face scarcity, firms face scarcity, and the government also faces scarcity. For the household, well, how many hours to work, how much to spend now, how much to save for retirement, college funds, you know, Labor is scarce because time is scarce. You only have 24 hours in a day, and therefore you can do as much as that time allows you. You can think about the time you had to make a choice and what resources were scarce at that time. And you had to choose one course of action over the other. Firms also face scarcity in a sense that they have to look at skilled labor. If they have skilled labor, they have to allocate the skilled labor among competing or alternative products. The government, the same thing, how much to allocate to defense, USP, as public infrastructure, public education, and stuff like that. So scarcity is a central idea. Okay, for instance, this is a typical question you may see. Scarcity A applies to the brain surgeon, but not to a cab driver. That is not true. It's not a problem for politicians, no. Although politicians may have a lot of money, they still face scarcity. Exist only in rich countries, no. US is one of the richest countries in the world, but still faces scarcity. Exist only in developing countries, no. Developing countries may face higher levels of scarcity than richer countries or developed countries, but everybody faces it. So the right answer should be E, occurs when a resource is not freely available. Be careful here and make sure you understand this. When resources are not freely available, then we say they are scarce. Any question? Okay. What are resources? So resources are the inputs or factors of production used to make finished goods and services. Simply anything that are used to make goods and services are called resources. Another name for them is factors of production or the inputs, right? So we can have an input, output. So input, you put it into something, let's say the blending machine or the blender. Whatever goes in becomes the input, whatever comes out becomes the output. So the inputs are the resources, also known as the factors of production. So tomorrow, whenever I ask you that what are the factors of production, you tell me the factors of production are the things that are used to produce or to make goods and services. These are the inputs. It can be a cup of coffee sold at Starbucks, but that is the finished good. What went into the Starbucks coffee becomes the input or the factors of production. So we have the labor services, the skills of the barista, the building, the machines and other infrastructures, the coffee beans, natural resources used, the entrepreneurial ability of the owner. Okay, these are all the factors of production. So basically, there are four factors of production. We have the labor, capital, natural resources, and then the entrepreneurial ability. Any resource we're going to talk about will fall under one of these. All right. So labor is just the human effort, both physical and mental, that is used in production. A typical example is the hourly effort of a worker in a coffee shop. So that is the labor. When you, let's say you own the coffee shop, when you hire a person, someone to, distribute the coffee, that is labor. That is under labor. And then we have the capital resource or the capital input. Two types, the physical capital and then the human capital. The physical capital are the tools, okay, the buildings. You know, you differentiate it from the human capital. The human capital will be the knowledge, education, the experience, and stuff like that. So these are the two types of capital. The definition of capital is anything that is used to produce stuff as a broad classification under resources. And there are two types of capital, physical and then human. Make sure you understand these. The third resource is the natural resource, which occurs in nature. So we have water bodies, forest, oil reserves, mineral ores, all these are natural resources. And then we have the entrepreneurial ability, which is the guy or the group of people who have the ability to imagine new products and therefore organize them, process them, assume the risk, the rewards. All right. A typical example is um, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. He is known as the entrepreneur. So you can be an entrepreneur when you are the guy who is putting the product, the ideas together and organizing the other resources. Okay, let's think about this. Let's take this example. Kendra is a retired economist who enjoys building toy trains for her grandkids. She uses workbench and tools from her garage. Lumber she bought from the lumber store, which is $10, and varnish and paint she had left over from another project last year. Since a retired economist is always an economist, which of the following statement is she likely to make about building toy trains? Well, I am not paying for any resources, so the toy trains I'm building are good examples of free goods. Nope. I only paid $10 for the lumber, so the toy trains I'm building are a good example of free goods. That is also no. I'm using scarce resources to build the toy trains. Yes. So the workbench and the tools from her garage, the lumber she bought from the lumber store, all these are resources. It can be classified under one of the four um, resource or input definitions. Okay. All right. Any question with this? Now let's talk about economic decision makers. We've talked about the four inputs or the four types of resources. Now, what are the economic decision makers? These guys are also called the economic agents. So there are three. They, they actually, yeah, three. Household firms and then the government. These are the three economic decision makers. Household will sell resources in the resource market, receive income in exchange, receive income in exchange, and then uses the income to buy finished goods and services in the product market. Don't worry too much about this. We have a beautiful diagram to help you understand it. Firms buy resources from the household in the resource market and then produce the finished product they sell in the product market and earn revenue. The government comes in, the market economy, when the market fails to allocate the resources efficiently. Okay. Um, we'll talk about this more right here. So this is what we are trying to describe. But let's we are closing at 5:30, right?
Yes.
Okay. Um, I'll quickly go through the next slide and then we can close. There's also the international economy, okay, as the fourth decision maker. And we'll learn more about that when we move from the simple circular flow diagram to the complex one. So the simple one will consist of the three, and the complex one, we're just going to add the international market. So what is a market? A simple definition of a market is, a set of buyers, a set of sellers, and a mechanism through which they conduct their trade. In the past, it was almost always a physical place that you have to go to conduct your trade, but today there are online markets, there are digital markets that you don't even have to, have uh, people meeting, but still it's market. It has transitioned over the years. Okay. So buyers participate in the market because of what we call the rational self-interest, meaning buy a good when the value of that good to the buyer is greater than the market price. This means that individuals or consumers have some kind of internal valuation of the value of a product. So if they value internally a product higher than the market price, then they go buy it. So that is what we call the rational self-interest. Also, sellers participate in the market because of their rational self-interest. The same idea. They sell a good when the market price is higher than the cost of producing it. All right. The interaction between the sellers and the buyers leads to efficient allocation of scarce resources. And whenever a market fails to do that, to allocate resources efficiently, we say there is a market failure. So now sellers and buyers are not able to, efficiently allocate resources, determine a price that is good for everybody, and therefore the market has failed. That is when the government will come in. All right. This is where we'll end it today. Any question before I go? Before we leave, sorry. Any question? Okay. Then we will end it here and have a wonderful rest of your evening. I'll stay on for a while if you have any question.
Good night. Thank you.
You're welcome.